Every day I see my father at work. He pretends like he doesn't see me, but I know he does. I try to do the same, but that doesn't really pan out well either. When you're at work, you gotta be on top of your game. So I do my best to just get on with what I'm supposed to do and get my job done. I can feel him watching me. Good. I want him to see how different I am from him. I'm not in your shadow. I'm my own person. I know what you're wondering. Do others know he's my old man? Well, it's hard to say, really. If they don't, I have no plans to correct them, and if they do, well, there's nothing I can do about it. We are all under the shadow of our parents for the duration of most of our lives, whether we like it or not. In some cases, it just happens to be more obvious than others. Our parents help us define who we are. It is only a question of whether you follow their example or run as fast as you can in the other direction. For example, if you have a drug-abusing parent who happens to murder a newlywed couple that gets stranded on the side of the road when you were only 10 years old, that might make you inclined to perpetuate a similar kind of violence. Or it might make you decide to be a prison guard so you can make sure they and others just like them can't do it to anyone else. Much like I did.
Hello?
Hi, is this Karen Maitland?
Speaking.
Hey, I'm really sorry for calling so late. I know your daughter?
Is Anna okay?
Oh, no, your other. I go to community college with Sarah.
Oh, okay, wow. Whereabouts are you?
Chicago.
Chicago?
From your reaction, I'm guessing Sarah's always been a bit of a lone wolf character.
Yes, you could say that. But, I mean, it's great to hear she has friends over there. Can I ask what this is about?
Well, I'm actually calling to ask if you've been in touch with Sarah recently.
No, not really. She sort of broke off contact a while ago. I've always told her if she wanted to. I haven't changed my phone number just in case, but I think she's probably changed hers by now.
I'm sorry. That does sound like her. Well, listen, I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but Sarah's been reported missing.
What? What are you... missing? For how long?
Almost 3 days.
3 days? Okay, I mean, what's happening? Are people looking for her?
Well, that's the thing. I don't think they really are. I mean, she likes to keep to herself, so she didn't really have any close friends. And she was always sort of prone to absences. I mean, it's like no one's noticed. I told the police, but they've hardly looked into it.
But she was always a little antisocial. That doesn't mean they don't have to... Listen, can you tell me the name of your campus? I'll fly over tonight. I can be there by tomorrow morning.
Sure, it's the Westgate campus. I was just calling to let you know, but honestly, it's really great to hear someone actually take this seriously.
Of course. Thank you so much for telling me. I really, really appreciate it.
No, honestly, it's me who should be thanking you. I've done this a few times before, but it isn't fun if no one cares.
I'm sorry? What do you mean? Hello?
You know what sucks? Being the best in the world at something and it being utterly unmarketable. I'm an incredible mime. I can fake climbing a rope like you wouldn't believe, but mimes don't rake in the cash like they used to, and busking is hard. On a good day, I might make $30. No matter how many walls I'd walk into or jump ropes I would skip, my act just wasn't making any money. I was going to lose my apartment. I'm crediting my desperation for me not noticing how creepy the man was. I guess when your diet mostly consists of 99-cent tacos, you don't think twice when you get offered magic gloves. But he said they'd make me put on my most memorable show ever, so I took them. The next day, I set down my money bucket, slipped on the gloves, hit the play button on my stereo, and got to work. I started with the rope climb, then something amazing happened. As I closed my hands around the invisible rope, my fingers latched onto something solid. I could feel the rope in my hands. I gave it a strong pull. My feet came off the ground and I hung there, dangling from a rope that wasn't there. It was incredible, and I was rewarded by the sound of clapping and applause. A small crowd had gathered, staring in wonder as I just hung in midair. So I continued my show. I sat on chairs that weren't there, leaned impossibly against walls. I even rode an invisible bike through the ever-increasing crowd to uproarious cheers, and my money bucket was filled with cash. Then I tried the classic, the invisible box. I crouched and stretched out my hands, feeling the walls around me. I faked hysterics as I pounded on the walls. The crowd loved it. I gave a flourish of my hands to the crowd and got up from my crouch. My head slammed into the ceiling. I stifled a yell. The crowd laughed. I put my hands out and pushed on the invisible walls, but they wouldn't budge. I began to pound and kick and slam myself against the walls of my invisible prison, but nothing worked. I tried to take the gloves off, but it was like they were fused to my skin. I gave up the mime shtick and yelled for help, but my mouth produced no sound. Then the walls began moving inward. I tried to brace myself against them as the box grew smaller and smaller. The crowd cheered loudly as I pushed with all my might, trying to stop the wall's terrible advance until I could feel it on every side, squeezing in on me like a vice. And as my breath left me and my bones cracked, as the jubilant laughter of the crowd turned into terrified screams, I couldn't help but think that this was definitely my most memorable show ever.
I checked my watch as I walked up to the door, 10 minutes late. I'd been babysitting for them for 6 months. I was sure they wouldn't mind. Mr. Lopez answered the door. "Hey, I'm sorry I'm late," I started to say, but stopped when I saw him. His face was soaked with sweat, and he looked slightly agitated. No problem at all," he said, ushering me inside. In the kitchen, there was only a single light on above the table. At it, Mrs. Lopez was writing something feverishly on a slip of paper. "I'll be right back. I have to say goodbye to Denise." Denise was their 1-year-old daughter, who I had been watching for them. She disappeared into the darkness of the hallway, heading up the stairs. "What movie are you guys seeing tonight?" I asked, setting my bag down on the table. The pad of paper had holes punched through it, as if Mrs. Lopez had been pressing the pen down hard. "Huh? I don't know. I guess we'll decide when we get there." Mr. Lopez was shifting from foot to foot, looking more worried by the minute. I noticed a pretty sizable cut on his right cheek dribbled with dried blood. "Are you okay, Mr. Lopez?" I asked, but before he could answer, I heard Mrs. Lopez returning from upstairs. We should get going. Goodbye, Katie," she said, pulling me into a hug. She tightened her grip for a moment, and I could have sworn I heard a soft sob. "Thank you for everything," she said with great difficulty. She began to say something else, but her husband grabbed her and dragged her out the door. Before he closed it, he gave me a mournful, almost apologetic look. Then he closed it, and I was alone in the dark house. I thought about going out and talking to them more, or maybe even just leaving, but in the end I decided to stay, not turning on the lights so as to not startle up Denise. I climbed the stairs in the dark and headed into her room. I approached the crib and was about to lift her up when I saw a note lying on top of the blankets. I read it by the street light that glares feebly through the window. "Katie, I'm so sorry. He broke in while we were getting ready. He said he was going to kill us, do horrible things to Denise. He asked if anyone knew about us, and we told him about you. It's an exchange. I'm so sorry. I hope that God will forgive me one day." Looking out the window, I saw them pulling out of the driveway. They were crying. Perched in Mrs. Lopez's lap was Denise. Behind me, in the darkness, the door creaked open.
After a lifetime of being deaf, my best friend just received cochlear implants. When he woke up from the surgery, we all stood around him. His wife was the first to say anything. He heard her voice and at once began to cry. We all took turns speaking, letting him hear our voices and our names, and with each word we said, he became more emotional. When we were all finished, silence hung in the room. He looked up at me and asked what that sound was. It took me a moment to understand what he was hearing, and when I understood, I told him he was hearing silence. He shook his head. "This isn't silence," he said slowly, hearing his own voice for the first time. "I've been hearing silence all my life, and this is different. A sound came from just outside the hospital room. He perked up immediately. "Isn't that silence?" We all exchanged looks of trepidation around the room before I spoke. "No," I said slowly. "That was the sound of someone screaming."
Josh swept Laura's coat off of her shoulders and hung it in the closet. "Here we are." Smiling at her with affection, he inquired, "Wine?" She nodded. He paused, holding her gently. "You know, you're not like other girls, Laura." There was a tender kiss on her forehead, and he left. Laura watched him go. Over the last 5 months, she'd come to believe that he genuinely adored her, which made her happy. His adoration was all she wanted. The sound of clanging metal erupted from the kitchen, followed by a cheerful "whoops" from Josh. Laura chuckled as she went into the den and made herself comfortable on the couch. While she waited, she heard a tinkling noise coming from the closet. She looked towards the kitchen, assuming Josh would come in any second. He didn't. The tinkling persisted. Laura scanned the room and hesitantly approached the closet door. The knob was old and required a good strong twist, but she was able to get it open. She was greeted by an unexpectedly musty smell and an unmistakable breeze wafting towards her from behind the coats and knickknacks in the closet. Curious and surprised, she pushed the coats to the side and gaped when a set of stairs was revealed. The tinkling continued, louder now. She looked behind her cautiously. Once she verified Josh was still in the kitchen, she noticed a light switch on the wall. She flicked it on and descended the stairs. The tinkling grew louder yet. Laura stared in horror. Chained to the wall were 4 women. Dried blood was caked around their wrists and ankles. 3 were unconscious, she hoped, and hung limply. 1 was awake, but barely. She weakly moved her arms, causing the tinkling. Before she could move, there was a voice in her ear. "See, Laura? I told you you're not like other girls," Josh said. None of the others were as dumb. His words were cut off by an elbow to the face. He staggered back to the stairs just in time for Laura to land a blow to his skull with a fireplace poker. Laura stood over the prone figure, a look of disgust on her face. 5 months of pretending to care about this fuckface. 5 months of concealing her true motives, just to get access to this room. She went to the conscious woman, opened the manacles, held her when she fell to her knees, emaciated and weak. "It's okay now, sis," Laura said softly. "I'm here."